An Israeli soldier is shamed by her professor. The United States and Israel both quit UNESCO, and the Israeli political scene is absolutely crazy. Hi, I'm Ron Cantor, and this is your Israel Connection. So the other day at Hebrew University on Mount Scopus in Jerusalem, a professor, Dr. Carola Hilfrich, was seen lecturing, rebuking, condemning a female Israeli soldier. Now, what was her crime? She wore her uniform to class. Now, I need you to understand something about Israel. Israeli soldiers, particularly those who are new recruits, they wear their uniforms everywhere. You see soldiers everywhere, and often if they have an appointment or a class or somewhere to be, they don't always have time to change, and it's very normal and very accepted for young soldiers to wear their uniforms wherever they go. And this Dr. Hilfrich was rebuking the soldier for wearing her uniform to class. Now, why is that? This was an integrated class. You had Arab students, you have Jewish students, and much of Israel is integrated. We have cities that are segregated. We have cities like Haifa that are integrated. But if you go to a mall, you're going to see Jewish people, you're going to see Arabs. If you go to a university, you're going to see Arab students, and it's normal. And apparently this young soldier was being harassed by one of the Arab students. And so she went to her teacher and complained. And instead of the teacher going to the Arab student saying that's unacceptable to harass a student, she rebuked the Israeli student. And here's what she said. And again, it's on film. You can Google it and you can actually watch it. It's in Hebrew, but maybe somebody put subtitles. This isn't our class. You can't be naive. To be here in uniform and you want to be treated as a civilian, you are a soldier in the Israeli army and they'll treat you accordingly. And so she asked the teacher, "You're bothered that I'm in my uniform?" And the teacher said, "There are people whose civil society is important to them as the army is to you. You must accept their priorities as tolerantly as they accept and confront your priorities." No, that's not exactly correct. This is not, they weren't having a discussion about this. The girl was just there. The female soldier was simply just there and she was harassed. And the teacher is saying that's okay because you triggered them with your uniform. That word trigger, it makes me crazy. I want to get rid of that word trigger. You know, we use this word trigger as if we have no self-control. You know what, friends? I get triggered all day long every day. Every time I watch the news, I get triggered. But I don't go out and shoot somebody, and I don't go out and rebuke somebody, and I don't go out and find people in the street and start yelling at them. You know what? It's time that we mature as a society and learn how to be triggered and not get in an argument with somebody. Why is it that we're expected to be tolerant if somebody's abused towards us, and yet that person can't be tolerant of the young soldier? So this ended up being a big deal because the professor did not know that she was being filmed at the time as she is rebuking the Jewish student. It goes on the internet, goes viral, and there was big protests at Hebrew University. Now the good news is that the university did not stand with the professor. They actually apologized. Now, in their apology, let's see. It says the Hebrew University's management condemns disrespectful behavior between students and between faculty members and students. Wasn't exactly the strongest apology. The university and the lecturer apologized to the student who felt hurt. Oh, she felt hurt. No, that's not the issue. Don't apologize because the student felt hurt. Apologize because you did something wrong. I want to do a course. I'm going to make it real cheap, maybe like $5.99. And it's going to be called How to Apologize Properly. Because I see this all the time on Instagram, on Facebook, where people apologize, and it's always, I want to apologize if people felt hurt by the things that I said. No, no, apologize for your behavior. I was wrong. I did something wrong. This professor was wrong. There is nothing wrong with wearing your, thank God for the IDF, by the way. Now, I'm not saying that the IDF is perfect. Every army has issues that they need to deal with. But if there was no IDF, there'd be no Israel. And this Arab student that was harassing this young lady would not be living in a free society. Because I got news for you, at the end of the day, the freest Arabs in the Middle East live in Israel. Israel is the only nation in the Middle East where Arabs are free to criticize their government, to even yell at the soldier the way that she did, or he did. I don't know if it was a male or female. You know, I once, I think I shared this recently, but I once took a video camera and I went to Tel Aviv. I was actually having lunch with my family, and I had to run back to the car. And as I ran back to the car, it was Saturday afternoon, there were just hundreds of Arabs having the best time sitting on the grass, cooking what we call ala aish, you know, on the grill, and they were just having a great time. And I filmed it, and then I asked on YouTube, what city is this? Nobody said Tel Aviv. Most people don't realize that Tel Aviv, or Israel, hosts the freest Arabs in the Middle East. So again, I just want to say that this was a big busha, an embarrassment, a shame that our soldiers in Israel, they're not like hardened, tough. They're our neighbors' kids. They are the computer geek who comes over to help. They're everyday, normal Israeli 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, and we love them and we value them, and we should never shame them for wearing their uniform. You see, friends, at the end of the day, Trigger is simply the name of Roy Rogers' horse. Okay, on to our next story. UNESCO, the United Nations Education, Science, Cultural Organization. I think I got all the words right, but I probably left out a few words in between. This organization, they're for the preservation of science and culture. And this horrible, horrible organization, they spend most of their time criticizing Israel. Now, what they did in the past couple years is they have basically ethnically cleansed Jerusalem from her Jewishness. So, for instance, they no longer refer to the Temple Mount as the Temple Mount. They call it the Noble Sanctuary, or the equivalent of that in Arabic. In other words, they want you to believe that it is a Muslim holy site, and they don't want you to ever know that it was once a Jewish holy site. This is intellectual dishonesty, and yet this whole organization is about the preservation of culture, and they're erasing culture. And thank God for my hero, Nikki Haley. I love Nikki Haley, and I can't believe that she's leaving the United Nations, because she's probably been the boldest U.S. ambassador to the UN in the history of U.S. ambassadors to the UN. Or as the president said, she made that job cool again. And she has been in the face of UNESCO for the past couple years. And finally, the United States and Israel, they both said, you know what, enough, enough. We are not going to keep giving you money so that you can just criticize us and change history, because the fact of the matter is that if there was no temple, Jewish temple, the first temple and then the second, if that was never there, then that site would never even be significant to Islam. And a lot of folks don't even know this, but the Quran does not even mention Jerusalem by name, whereas the Old Testament, you can find the word Zion, or Jerusalem about 1,000 times. And yet they want to say that that's a Muslim holy site and not a Jewish holy site. Not true. So way to go, U.S., way to go, Israel. They finally left. They're not giving them any money anymore, and we applaud you in that. Okay, so our final story today, and I'm going to do a little teaching afterwards, so hang around. But our final story today is about Israeli politics. I've lived here 15 years, 16 years actually almost, And I've never seen anything like this political season. So we've shared with you over the past couple weeks that our government has dissolved itself, and we've got new elections coming on April 9th, and there's just a lot going on in connection to that. People are switching parties, and that kind of happens, but I've never seen anything like this. For instance, there's a guy by the name of Avi Gabay, and it is funny that his last name is Gabay because he said goodbye to his partner, Tzipi Livni. Now, Tzipi Livni is a longtime politician. She, in Israel, she leads a party called Tenuah, which means the movement, and funny name. And she is the leader of the movement, and she combined with one of Israel's oldest party, Labor, or what we call Avodah. And what you can do is two parties can combine their forces to run as one party in the elections. And so they became the Zionist Union. And Gabay stood up the other day on live television. And let me just read to you what he did. Gabay made the announcement that he was dissolving his partnership with Livni, thus disbanding the Labor Tenuah partnership that made up the Zionist Union on live TV as Tzipi Livni sat right by his side without even giving her advance warning. So you understand? This guy, they're partners together. They've got like... they've got a good number of seats in the Knesset right now, just over 20, I think. But they're doing so poorly that they were probably only going to get 9 seats in the next government, which is not a lot at all. And so they're having this news conference, and he doesn't even tell her. And she's sitting right next to him, and he stands up and he says, Tzipi, Gabay, that's his name, Gabay, Avi Gabay. He said he basically disbanded this thing, and she sat there humiliated. I've never seen anything like it in Israeli politics. And of course, now she's accusing him of sexism because she's a woman. And that's something I really don't understand, because on the one hand, I hear all these, there's marches and there's people, women asking for equal rights, and I believe that. I believe that women and men, in terms of how they're treated, should be treated equally. But that also means that when somebody is something stupid and foolish, just say he's stupid, just say he's foolish, but it had nothing to do with the fact, Tzipi, that you're a woman. It had to do with the fact that he didn't want to be a partner with you anymore. And he should have called you up. He should have called you, Tzipi, I don't want to do it. It was really rude what he did, but it wasn't sexism. It was just stupid politically. And as the polls have shown, his popularity has gone way down. Even members of his own party had no idea what he was about to do. So they're the super left wing. Then you've got a middle of the road party called Kulanu, which means all of us. And Kulanu, their leader is a man by the name of Kahlon, Moshe Kahlon. And he was the new up-and-coming guy in our last elections. He was going to make housing prices cheaper, and just... he's having a hard week. Pray for Moshe Kahlon, because virtually all of his he's the leader of the party, but his number, I think, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they just left. And so he's kind of alone now. He's got to find new people to get into his party. Bit rough week for him. And then you've got the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who, according to all the polls, he's going to swimmingly win the next election. Again, I shared this with you before. In Israeli election, winning doesn't mean that you actually win. It just means that you have the party with the largest number of seats. And right now it's expected that out of 120 seats, Likud, Netanyahu's party, will get 30 seats, or 25%. And then he'll have to form a coalition with all the other parties to get at least 61, preferably 75, 80 seats to have a strong coalition. The problem is this, is that the Prime Minister is under investigation for bribery and corruption. The police, the national police, have recommended that he be indicted. But, the police, they don't indict. They just do the investigation. It's the Attorney General that has to make the decision to indict. And so Benjamin Netanyahu, he thought, well, there's no way they're going to indict me in the middle of the election, because that would affect democracy. They'll wait until after the election, which I'm going to win. I'm going to be the Prime Minister again, and then they can decide what they're going to do. That's what most people thought that he was thinking, except for, what's his name? Mandelblit. Mr. Mandelblit. And you got to pray for Mr. Mandelblit, because he's getting attacked in, in the public right now. There's been some violent acts against his family. I think a grave was desecrated. The emotions are high right now because this guy has the power to indict the prime minister or to clear him of all charges. Now you say, Ron, I've had people email me, Ron, is Bibi guilty? Is he not getting? What do I know? I'm little Ron Kander. I don't know. I'm not privy to everything the police know. I do know that, like in most countries, Israeli politics, there is corruption. I can think of a past president that was in jail for rape, a past prime minister that was in jail for taking bribes. So it's not beyond the pale that the accusations are true. And the most serious accusation is that Prime Minister Netanyahu made a deal with a couple news organizations in exchange for favorable coverage. That's pretty not good, right, in democracy. But again, innocent till proven guilty. We have that here in Israel. But Mandelblit said yesterday that he's not going to wait until after the next elections to make his decision. So probably in January, this month, maybe early February, he's going to decide whether or not to indict Benjamin Netanyahu. And I want to tell you something. If he chooses to indict him, and again, I'm not giving an opinion on whether or not I think he should be indicted or not. I'm just letting you know what's going to happen. If he is indicted, that's going to be a huge earthquake to the political scene in Israel. It could be the difference between Likud winning and not winning in the next election. So stay tuned. I will keep you posted on what's happening here. But I will tell you this, there is never a dull moment in this country. And I've said it before, Netanyahu has done a great job internationally, protecting us against Iran, against Syria, against terrorist organizations. There are some issues inside the country that I think he could have done a better job. At the end of the day, we don't need one person to be prime minister forever. That kind of tends to lead to thinking you can get away with stuff that you really shouldn't get away. So we'll see what happens. But honestly, pray for us that we would have God's choice for prime minister. If that's Bibi or somebody else, I just want God's choice. Okay? Okay, so we had a great meeting this week at Nes Cafe. I'm really enjoying this new work that we've started here. And I shared on healing. We've seen a lot of healing evangelism in the last 2 years here in Israel. Young people out on the streets, just walking up to people and saying, hey, are you sick? We just heard a testimony today from my assistant, Michael, who talked about a fellow with an ear problem that asked him and his friend Or to pray for him on the streets of Tel Aviv. They prayed for him and he said, what's going on my ear? Things are moving. And then they prayed again and his ear was completely healed. We've seen that over and over again. I was in a super farm not long ago. This is a true story. And there was a woman, two people in front of me, and I could see that she was in back pain. And I just felt, I got to pray for this woman. And so she pays and she goes outside, and then inexplicably, that's a rough word, inexplicably, she just stops. So I pay. It's like she's waiting for me. And I walked up to her and I said, hey, it's kind of weird to walk up to somebody you don't know and just start talking to them. But I said, I could see that you're in back pain. Sometimes when I pray for people, God heals them. Can I pray for you? She said yes, and I just prayed a quick prayer, and she looked at me stunned. And she just said, it's gone, you know, in Hebrew, of course. And she was completely healed. I said, wait right there. I ran to my car. I got my testimony book, and I have also identity theft in Hebrew. And I thought, well, if she was just being nice to me, then she's going to be gone by the time I get back. But 3 minutes later, she was still there waiting for me, gave her the books. And God's been moving like that in Israel. And I just want to encourage you that if you're a believer, if you've been filled with the Holy Spirit, then there's power in your hands. You know, the power of God is transferred through our hands to other people. We see that in the life of the Messiah, Yeshua, that through his hands he did miracles. He took mud from the ground and put it on the eyes with his hands of a blind man, and he was healed. He took bread and fish in his hands, and he blessed it, and it turned into enough food to feed 5,000 people. With his hands, he took the hand of a dead girl and she came back to life. With his hands, he touched a dead boy at a funeral. His mom is crying. Everybody's sad. He touched this boy, and he came back to life. You know, there's power in our hands. He touched the head of the mother-in-law of Peter, and her fever left immediately. A leper came up to him. And if there was ever anyone that you didn't want to touch, it's a leper, because they've got a flesh-eating disease and it's contagious. And most people would be like, you know, they used to have to cry, you know, unclean, unclean. Yeshua just touched him. It's okay, buddy. You're cleansed, you're healed. And the leper was healed. The power of God was in his hands. And he's gone to the Father, and he said, because I go to the Father, the things that I do, you will do, and even greater things than this will you do. The power of God is now in our hands. And I read this story when I was a young believer about John G. Lake. This is amazing. During the time of the bubonic plague, I think it was the early 1900s, he was in Africa and people were dying, and everyone was afraid to bury the dead bodies because foam was coming out of their mouth and it had the disease in it. And if you got it on you, you were likely to get the disease and die. So Lake, who was a believer, filled with God, was not afraid at all. He said, well, yeah, we'll bury him, no problem. And they're burying the dead bodies. And when these doctors came from the States, they said, well, what are you using to protect yourself, John G. Lake? And he said, what are we using? We just walk in faith. We live in the power of the Spirit. That disease can't touch us. And like, huh? He said, let me show you. And he said, take some of that foam from one of the dead bodies, put it on my hand. What? Are you crazy? No, just do it. They put it on his hands, and then they put his hand underneath a microscope, and they watched as the disease died in his hands. And he said, you know what? That is the law of the Spirit of life in Messiah Yeshua, in Messiah Jesus. That the faith, the power of God, the anointing inside of me will kill every single one of those germs. That is the power of God that we possess in our hands. So I want to encourage you, friend, to pray for people who need healing. And again, not just believers. We tend to be bold inside the congregation, but kind of wimpy outside the congregation. God is excited to use his power through you outside the congregation. That's where the fun stuff happens. So I want to encourage you to be bold, to go out, to share, to not be afraid, because what's going to happen is that the more you pray for unbelievers to be healed, the more healing you're going to see. It's a fact. It'll happen. So I encourage you. I bless you. I release that grace upon you today in Yeshua's name. Okay, friends, that concludes another week of Your Israel Connection, and I got to go because it's my wife's birthday. We're going to have a big party night, and then I got to wake up in the middle of the night and go to America. I'm happy to go to America. We're going to have a great time there just for a week doing some filming with God TV, but I'm not happy about waking up at 3 a.m. But we love you. We bless you from Tel Aviv. And you probably won't see me next week because I'll be in the U.S. You'll see me in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.